Welcome to the Blavatnik School of Government at the University of Oxford. I'm Chris Stone, Professor of Practice of Public Integrity at the school and co-chair of the Rising Public Leaders Program.
Welcome. I'm Roxana and Radu. I'm Associate Professor of Digital Technologies and Public Policy here at the Blavatnik School and co-chair of the program with Chris.
So over the next hour, Roxana and I will describe the content of the Rising Public Leaders Program and how it's organized and how it's taught. We're also going to be answering questions that you and all the others joining this live webinar post using the question and answer tool at the bottom of your Zoom window.
Also, during this hour, you'll hear from 3 public officials who enrolled in the program last year. Each of them will have a chance to explain what they were looking for in the program, what they took from it, and who they think can most benefit from the course.
Those 3 officials are Essuman, legal counsel to the President of Ghana, Milena, Grecuccio, Chief of Management and Strategy at the UN International Computing Center, and Neerav Patel, who will soon be the United Kingdom's ambassador to Qatar. All 3 of them enrolled in the program last year, and we're really grateful to them for sharing their thoughts on the program. We think you'll find their accounts especially useful in understanding what the program can offer you. We've designed the Rising Public Leaders Program for anyone in the public sector preparing to take up a top leadership position in the next several years. That includes civil servants in national or state governments or in multilateral institutions who are already directing a substantial unit and expecting someday to rise to CEO, Director General, or Permanent Secretary level in the next 3 to 7 years. The program's also for those elected officials who are expected to serve in ministerial or in legislative leadership roles in that same time period. And it also includes political appointees in key roles advising ministers or cabinet officials. If you're preparing to take up a senior leadership role in the public sector, this program is for you.
Let me tell you a bit more about what we cover in the program. We cover the knowledge, the skills, and the conceptual frameworks that any leader in the public sector today needs to master, regardless of the institution they will be leading or the country they are serving in. The course includes 6 different topics or themes. We start with harnessing digital technology, where we look at the use of digital technology in the public sector and the regulation of digital space. It could be technologies, but also broader than that. Effective communication is another theme that runs throughout the program. And here you'll learn about how you can communicate better internally, but also externally with partners, media, and the public. Decision-making is a key component. We look at practical ways to protect against the biases that distort decision-making by individuals and teams. Strengthening public organization runs throughout the course. It includes how we structure public-private partnerships, how we use incentives with our own staff, and how to manage at scale, shaping institutional culture. The 5th theme is negotiation, where we're bringing out lessons on how to manage multi-party negotiations and how to advance the public interest. And last but not least, it's actually the core component of this program. It's integrity in public life and how to manage the ethical pressures that everybody experiences while serving for the public sector.
So those are the topics we cover. Let me take a minute and explain a little bit about how the program is organized and how we and our faculty colleagues teach it. Roxana and I co-chair the program, and we're joined by several other faculty from the Blavatnik School of Government. We're going to show you just some photographs of last year's program, and you can, while I describe the teaching, you get a little sense of the environment that we teach in. The faculty members use very different styles of teaching. Some lead you in a seminar-style discussion. Some will teach from case studies. Some teach with short lectures and then answering your questions. You will be active participants throughout the program, engaging in 2 complex simulations, preparing your own presentations, and sharing your experiences throughout the week. We use these different styles on purpose because different people learn in different ways. Most important, you'll be learning from each other as well as from the world-class faculty.
In just a few minutes, you'll hear from one of our last year participants, Neerav Patel, and he will give us a sense of what his experience has been. But first, let's take a look at some of the questions coming in. I'd like to remind you that you can post at any time and we'll be able to see them on the screen and answer as we go along. The first question over here is what the panel expects from the participants for their aspirations about public service.
It's a great question. And I think what we've found is that we are usually surprised and inspired by the aspirations that participants bring to the program. We've had people already in fairly senior roles, people in advising the chief executive of their country or the head of the government. We've had legislators. We've had people who are playing deputy director roles. But everyone who comes brings usually aspirations both for their own career, that is hoping to move up into more senior roles, but also aspirations for the government and the public service of their country. I think the dynamism in the classroom really comes from that commitment that people bring into trying to improve the public sector in one or another country or state. The program is exclusively for people in the public sector. We know that any important problem worth tackling is going to need every sector's involvement. The big problems that governments face today all take the public, the private, the social sectors working together. But the role of people in the public sector is different. It's special in those collaborations, and that's what we really focus on. So whatever your aspiration to contribute to the public sector in your country or your state or your multilateral institution, that's what we need you to bring to the classroom. So we'll hear from Neerav. He's a British civil servant who came on the program last year when he was working in the Cabinet Office. Since taking the course, Neerav has been appointed as the UK's next ambassador to Qatar. I spoke with him just a couple of weeks ago as he was preparing to take up his new post in early 2024, and this video clip is from that conversation.
Hi, I'm Neerav Patel, and I'm preparing to be the next British ambassador to the state of Qatar. And when I did the Rising Public Leaders Programme a few months ago, I was Director of Analysis in our Prime Minister's office in the British government in the Cabinet Office.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Neerav, let me just ask you, when you were in the Prime Minister's office, in the Cabinet Office, why did you sign up for the course? What was it that you were looking for in your own development at that point?
Thanks, Chris. So it was a really interesting time for me. I was thinking about how I could, lift up my leadership skills and capabilities to the next level, to sort of really think about how I could sort of lead across systems and understand a bit more about my own leadership style. And I was talking with a mentor of mine who had done the Executive Public Leaders Programme, and he'd highly recommended it. So I was really looking for an opportunity to think through with a peer group what it was that I needed to do to lift myself up to be a leader at that kind of higher DG corporate CEO level. It was obviously very attractive, the idea of coming to Oxford with a sort of world-class faculty and sort of facilities. And the thing that really, really attracted me to the RPLP was that the fact that the peer group wasn't just another group of British civil servants talking about the challenges we're facing, but a real diversity of leaders from around the world and from a range of different backgrounds. That really, really sold it for me. And so what I really enjoyed was being in a group that wasn't just civil servants, but it was alongside politicians and regulators. So people who are working in public service from a range of different perspectives and backgrounds, and not just people working in Western governments, but, working in kind of international organizations from Africa, from sub-Saharan Africa, from South Asia, in a range of really sort of diverse and interesting ways. And there was something about the nature of the course as well as the membership of it. It wasn't just talking about the substance of public policy or types of leadership, but it was quite practical as well. And I was really, really taken by the public integrity aspects of the course, which I wasn't really thinking that much about in advance, but actually it's probably one of the best things I did. And that's one of the things I've taken away most and used most actively since the week.
Oh, that's great. And maybe you could say a little bit more about, so how have you taken that away, or other bits of it? How have you been trying to adjust your own practice in light of anything from the program?
So I suppose there's a couple of things. Firstly, it's quite an intensive week in Oxford, and you end up forging some really powerful personal connections with your peer group. And we still have that group going now, sort of 9 months on. Our group is still very active. We're in touch almost on a weekly basis with us, sort of sharing our different sort of, in a confidential basis, our problem set. So you have an action learning set, a ready-made action learning set that stays with you for a period of time afterwards. So I treat that as an incredibly valuable sort of tool and capability that I can draw on to sort of test on some things. As I prepare for this senior ambassador role in the Middle East at a time of increased focus on the region, there's a couple of things from the course that I've pulled through on and that I'm using actively as I prepare for that next role. Firstly, it's that public integrity framework and skill set that we focused on. I have been thinking a lot about how to sort of pull that through and to set the right kind of culture in the embassy that I'm going to lead overseas. And it's really useful to look back on my notes and think about those tools and skills and capabilities. There was a really useful set of training on communicating as a leader and culture setting and using stories to connect with your teams and your staff. And I've been using that in a very practical way to set leadership, not just in my future embassy, but across the Middle East region in the Foreign Office. And then finally, having connections with some of the faculty members, including yourself and Roxana and a couple of the other folks on at the Blavatnik school, I found it really helpful to be able to sort of send you an email or pick up the phone if I've got a specific problem. So it's actually a really useful kind of, I think, as a safety blanket or a sort of set of tools and skills that I can draw on as time gets on.
When you think about the program, who do you think it'd be most useful for? When you think about your peers, people you know, people coming up after you, where in someone's career do you think this program best fits?
It's a good question. I mean, I suppose, as I said, it's quite an intensive week in Oxford. It requires a good amount of pre-reading and working in the evenings to get the most out of the day. So I think it needs to have people who are willing to invest the time and really get into it. You've got to sort of throw yourself into 100%. If you don't fully invest, you won't get all of the returns for that investment. I think it makes sense for the people to be pitching for this and going for it to be sort of just on the cusp of stepping up to kind of leading full organizations and networks. I found it really useful, and because it's practical and not just theoretical, as I was stepping up to become sort of a CEO level leader, to have that kind of focused training and assessment.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you so much. I'm very glad to hear that you're still in touch with, you've got an active action learning set going with your colleagues, and I hope it continues. And good luck in Qatar.
Thank you so much, Chris. It was great to see you.
So it's wonderful to get that chance to hear from Neerav directly, and it's wonderful that he answered some of the questions that you've been posing as well. Roxana and I are going to take a few minutes to answer a few of the questions that have come in with the Q&A, and then we'll have a chance to hear from another one of our former participants. So the first question I wanted to just take up is, question, do I need a degree or any kind of academic achievement to apply? There's no academic prerequisite for this program. We aren't going to be asking you about your success in prior university courses. We do want to know what you've done by way of training, but that's really just to help us understand how you're coming to the program. So the answer is no, there is no academic prerequisite for this program. It really is about getting people together in jobs where they have real responsibility now, and they're rising with an ambition to more responsibility and greater involvement in the public sector.
We have another question about the kind of community or network that you will join as part of the program. And I guess Neerav answered part of that question, but I could point you to 3 different communities you will be joining. The first one is the cohort. You're part of a cohort of people coming from all over the world, all working in the public sector, facing different challenges. And as Neerav was saying, you might stay in touch with them for the rest of their life. They are your closest group with whom you spend your whole week in Oxford. The second community is that of the Blavatnik School. You're going to be in touch with us, with the faculty. You'll have access to the resources here, and that's a lifelong connection. And the third one is the community of alumni of our executive programs. We have a number of them, and this is a growing community with leaders at different levels, rising leaders as well as senior leaders.
There's a wonderful question here about seeking more information about the integrity sessions and how they're formatted. The integrity sessions really make up the spine of the program. We work on issues of integrity each morning of the program together. Those are small group conversations, and they draw on your own experiences, the experiences of others in the cohort. But we frame them with material about public responsibility and public ethics. So you'll hear from one of our senior faculty in the school, Joe Wolf, who'll provide an opening framework for thinking about questions and challenges that get at ethical dilemmas that you face in the public service. Then we draw on your experience in small group discussions, and then we come back together to discuss as a full cohort some of the lessons that you've taken both from Professor Wolf, but also from each other and from Roxana and myself as we've talked in the mornings. So there's no shortage of it, and I think that's one reason why you heard from Neerav that it played such a central role in his experience as one of those things he took with him. There's plenty of material there. And as he said in that interview, it's very practical. This is an opportunity to use frameworks and conceptual tools to help you solve really practical dilemmas.
We'll take 2 more questions, and then we'll go on with the experience of another participant in the program. What is expected for participants in terms of preparation before and during the program itself? That's a really good question. We designed the program so that you get only a few materials in advance, but we do expect that you engage with those materials because they will be required for what we do during the residential time here in Oxford. And during the program, as you've heard, it's quite an intense week. We do morning to evening. There are a number of social events as well that occupy your agenda. So we expect that you don't take on additional work and you don't plan for this to be done alongside the program. It's very difficult to get everything done. We actually hope that you can immerse fully in what we're doing here in Oxford and that you can take the most out of it. So I would say preparation time, a couple of sessions we do in advance, and a couple of materials you will get from us with a week or 2 weeks notice, and then during the program trying to manage your agenda so that you're fully available for what we do here.
I'm going to combine a couple of the questions we have. There's a question about the the level of seniority that you're expected to have when you apply. That is, are you at what professional level or role are you at? And there's also a question from one of you who's currently a student and you have a desire to work in politics in the future. And so how do you describe your current organization? So let me be very clear. This program is for people who are currently in public sector roles. That is, part of a state government, part of the civil service, playing an appointed role in government or an elected role in government in one country or another. Or you already have a position and you're just preparing to take it up, but it's been confirmed, you know the start date, you know what that position is. So this is not a program for people considering a public sector role or considering a political role. There are programs of that kind, but that's not what the Rising Public Leaders program is. This program is for those of you in the civil service, in public service now, elected, appointed, career, or moving into such a role on a firm date. But in terms of seniority, we're expecting people who are in some position of management leadership responsibility now. That is to say, you may be leading a small team, you may be leading a big department, you may not be in a leadership role, but be advising somebody in a leadership role. But you've got a few years under, you've got some experience to draw on, or you're preparing for a fairly substantial role. So if you're just entering the public service at an entry-level position, again, this program is probably not for you. But if you're mid-career, or if you're expecting to join the public service or join a government at a mid-level stage where you have some responsibility, but you're hoping that you'll be moving up to a more senior role in the next 3 to 7 years, this program is just for you. And you'll be able to draw on both the experience and the ambition and commitment of the others around you.
We'll now hear from Milena Grecuccio, also reflecting on some of the fit for the program. She's Chief of Management and Strategy Division at the UN International Computing Center. She came on our program last year.
Milena, thank you so much for joining us. Maybe we could start by could you just introduce yourself to the participants on the program?
My name is Milena Grecuccio, and I am an international civil servant. I'm the Chief of Staff and Chief of Management and Strategy at UNICC, this organization here. It's the organization that provides technology services to the entire UN system and some international organizations as well. So that's me.
Terrific. And you came on the program last year, and I'm just wondering, when you were first thinking about applying to the program, or when you were doing your application, what were you looking for in this program? Why did this program appeal to you?
I looked at the content, and I was really impressed by the content itself, because it's lots of focus on integrity, and also I was surprised by the space that was given to technology. So I could really marry this, the need for me to revive the calling for public service, because it needs to be revived every now and then, because it's hard. And then also seeing, how technology had a place in the program made me feel like, okay, that's the right thing to do. Well, for me. It had the two aspects.
So you came on the course. Did anything surprise you about it? What was the experience like? What worked for you? You find it easy, hard?
I'm an introvert, so it takes a lot of energy to go out there and really express opinion. And it's an impressive crowd around you, right? So to overcome that, it was hard. But not that hard either, because very quickly a sense of community starts, and it feels safe to share, safe to be just yourself. So that was just hard at the beginning, but then surprisingly, what surprised me, everything, because Yes, I expected a leadership sort of. I didn't expect a course. I expected, food for thought, right? And I got that. I got very meaningful interaction, very incredibly informative and meaningful presentations and lessons. And I got all of the expected, all that I mentioned before, the reasons why I applied, and all even more interesting content than I expected. But what really touched me was the fact that I changed. The big takeaway is that I changed after that week there. I'm different. I'm a different leader. I'm a different professional.
Who would you think would benefit from this course the most?
All civil servants. This is the way we call them at the UN. I don't know if it's universally accepted, but all people working for the public good in a public function. So national, international organization, multilateral. I think this course should be mandatory. And then also politicians who aim for office and then really want to do the job, right? Just not just getting the office, but also doing the job. I think that's again, mandatory, if you ask me. Especially on the integrity, on the value, because there's a lot of, we do a lot of work on integrity and what it means. And it's also it's not just theoretical, it's also the contextualized well. So it's really in the world of today, right? So that's very useful, because it's not just, the theory that one can have, because we all have, our reference books, etc. The course puts you in a situation where your integrity, your values are tested with the reality of today, which is extremely complex. And a lot of the learning comes from interacting with each other, but come on, not only. I think what is taught is well thought. It's like, sorry, that's the Italian in me. It's like you can see that you're taking, all the teachers, the professors are taking insights from what's going on in the world, from the leaders of the world. You can see that it's very topical. It's very, gives you tools for the world of today. And it's well thought. It's not just, a textbook. And that's, so it's, for me, it should be mandatory for all civil servants.
Terrific. It's great to hear, Milena, and I hope that was helpful for you. Just hearing, again, a very different perspective from Neerav's. Milena's in a very different role, but I think you'll hear both, but similar and different from the two of them. Let's take a few minutes now to answer more of your questions, and thank you for contributing so many questions. The tool's still open, and we still have a chance to cover more of them. So we're going to take those now, and then we'll have a final round after we hear from one more of our former participants. There was a question about how big the group is, and it's very simple. We aim for a group anywhere from about 25 to 40 people. We want to keep it big enough so that there's a lot of experience in the room, and we break up into smaller groups to do many of the exercises. But we also want to make sure that it's not too big. You need time to get to know each other. We have a very intense week together, but you build real relationships with many of your colleagues. If you currently, we have a question about someone who's currently working in government and a regulatory function with financial markets. You may, and someone who interacts mostly with government officials and a background in finance. We've had several people with exactly that profile. If you're in a public regulator, doesn't have to be in the elected government of the day. There are many people working in regulatory roles, in the public sector, even in structures that have some independence from the elected government. That's perfect. As I say, we've had financial regulators, company regulators, media regulators in the program before. I think they've benefited tremendously from that experience. There's There's another question about funding for the course and how to persuade your employer to cover the cost. I wish we could answer that question for you. I think the employers in the public sector have very wide array of tools for supporting training and training opportunities for their people. Sometimes they're formally through a large human resources or professional development department, but sometimes your individual supervisor or manager has access to funds to support individual training. We really can't answer that question globally. There's so many different opportunities, but we've tried to put enough material on the website about the experience, about the content, about the benefit of the program, and you can use those materials to share with your employer or whatever official in your government controls funding opportunities, professional development opportunities for you and your colleagues. There are very limited scholarships available for our executive programs at the school. If you really don't have the funds to cover the tuition, but you have other ways of getting yourself to Oxford, you can inquire about those, but I would not count on them. There are very limited scholarships and lots of people seeking them.
Getting to some of the other questions, English is not my native language. Will that matter? The whole program is conducted in English, and we expect a fluent level and proficiency to be able to read the materials and engage meaningfully in the conversations. It is not important that English is not your native language. In fact, English is not the native language of some of the people on the faculty teaching this program, but we are all at a proficient level. So I would say it does not matter what language you speak at home, but your working language level for English should be good enough to have those meaningful conversations. Then we have a comment in from Renata who would like to extend a potential partnership with the program, working with the Brazilian public sector. Thank you, Renata, for that proposal. Let's take that up. We have a question around the average age of the participants, and here it's quite difficult to answer because we have quite a bit of variation there.
We've had participants from their mid and late 20s all the way through their 50s.
50s, yeah.
I don't think people don't. The program is not for people who are a year or two away from retirement, and it's not for people who are still in school and hoping to join the public service. But there are leadership opportunities for people in public services around the world today at almost any age, and this program is flexible for that. We've had a very broad range. And Renata, let me just say, the program is obviously not for you if you're in civil society organization, but we would love to work with you to get the information about the program available to those 1,200 or more people you've helped place into the public service. I think your own alums and those you've worked with might really value the course. Let's take some of the others. We have one question coming from an advisor to a presidential candidate in an upcoming election. We have had, as you heard, we've had advisors to presidents, to prime ministers, to cabinet officials come on the program, and I think some of them have found it particularly helpful. If your candidate doesn't win the election, it may not be as useful as it would be otherwise. But if they are a serious candidate and the election is coming up relatively soon, you should go ahead and apply for this year, and we'll let you know when we see your individual application. If the election is 9 months or 12 months off still, you might want to wait until you're closer to the position. But I certainly, an advisor to the head of state or to a senior official, the program can work really well for you.
Is the program held under confidential rules because the discussions could be sensitive? Yes. we are applying the Chatham House rule for the lectures and interactions with the whole group, but we try to keep the confidentiality for everything that relates to public integrity sessions. So I would say, yes, we have different levels of confidentiality. Some of the insights from the general conversations can be taken away, but the small group discussions will stay only within the room.
And on that same point, we don't permit any recording, and we do no recording of any of the discussions for that same reason. We really want the conversations among the group to stay within the group. And I think, as you heard from Neerav earlier, that confidentiality, that the trust that comes in the cohort is a crucial product of the program and a really valuable result. So we count on everybody to keep the conversations confidential. As Roxana says, sharing the insights with your teams, with your colleagues, that's an important part of any training. But not sharing anything that's attributed to any individual or that can be traced back to any individual, really important. There's a question about the events or contact with program participants after the program. You heard from Neerav, there's always self-generated groups that continue after this program, as happens with many such programs, and we certainly encourage that. But we also hold, as Roxana was saying, you join an alumni network of our executive program for the school, and we hold an event each term that the Oxford is in session. We hold an online event for all of our Public Leaders Programs alumni. So once you join the program, you are, as long as you're interested, you will be receiving invitations to come together with other alumni of the program for continuing conversations on these many different topics.
We had another question around the visa support, whether there was a visa support in place once you apply. And our team here is doing their very best, and they're extremely on top of it when it comes to visa support. So the general answer is yes, but of course the application has to be handed in by yourself, and in some countries that might mean interviews in a different regional center. So I would say plan accordingly. Keep in mind that it takes quite long to get the visa these days, so just make sure you submit an application early and you go through those different stages as early as possible. There are always delays in the process. Do we get guest speakers, or is everybody coming on the program from the university? It's the latter. We have people who teach regularly here at the Blavatnik School of Government who are on our faculty roll, and they are with us throughout the program. There's no plug and play. There's nobody coming in and leaving after the session. You'll actually have a continuation of some of these conversations, and in some cases, you'll see some of those faculty members twice or even 3 times throughout the week. And we believe there's great value in having that community and that connection. So we have built a program around what we can actually offer with faculty in-house.
There is a part of the program which involves a visit to, we will move you to London, and we spend a day with parliamentarians. So while we don't bring any officials into the program to the school, we do have an opportunity to interact with some very senior political officials when we do that London visit. There's a wonderful question about is the course for members of Parliament, and so connected to that parliamentary visit, I can say we've had some of our most enthusiastic participants have been active MPs in their own country. You don't have to be in any particular executive role to do that. So you may be an MP, you may be in opposition, you may be in the part of the governing party, but not in a ministerial role. It's fine. Any elected official at state or national level is welcome in the course, and I think you'll find a lot. And there's a question also about whether judges can participate. Absolutely. We've had prosecutors, we've had judges, we've had people in the legal community who are in public sector roles and they all find a place in this program.
Is all the teaching in person? Yes, it is.
Well-
Apart from a couple of sessions that we do before the program. So once you're in Oxford, everything is in person. But before you come to Oxford, you get a sense of some of the key themes we're covering in 3 sessions that are held about a week prior to you coming to Oxford. So with that in mind, I would say, yes, 95% of it is in person, but you'll have that opportunity to interact with your cohort and get to meet everybody online before we start in person.
So we're going to take some more questions in a few minutes, but we wanted to give you a chance to hear from a third former participant of the program who was with us last year. I want to give you a chance to hear from Essuman, an extraordinary man. He's legal counsel to the president of Ghana today and was in that role when he took the program last year. He also came last year, and this is a short clip from my interview with him just a couple of weeks ago. So, you were part of the Rising Public Leaders program last year. Why were you interested in the program? What was it that led you to sign up for that?
I felt that I needed some sort of public leadership training. I hadn't had that. I'd come from private practice as a corporate lawyer right into the government. And I had found my way, up until this stage. And I realized that, I am definitely on a leadership trajectory in my country, and it would not be right for me not to have any kind of training. So I looked around and I came across this program. I did my research and I realized that it may be a good fit for what I wanted to do, especially because I didn't have the luxury of time to be able to do, a full program on public policy or governance on leadership. So it just seemed very perfect for me at the time.
It's terrific. So when you think back on it, it's been 9 months or so now. What are 1 or 2 things you took from the program?
Like, so a number of things, the different modules on the program that were taught. One of them, for instance, being the integrity in public life. For someone like myself who's aiming for a very high office in the future, that is one thing that you've got to protect over the years. And that, I found that, module to be very, very helpful, particularly the safe space it created to be able to share challenges that ordinarily you wouldn't be able to do. And, for the last few sort of months, I'd had that situation come up in my work. And it's helped me to be able to navigate through such, situations. Another thing that I took from it that has actually come in very handy is the crafting of narratives. That was also that has been very helpful. We're sort of taught to tell stories and incorporate stories in our sort of engagement or advocacy. And I have used it even as recent as yesterday. I had to deliver a keynote address at a GIZ, German, donor agency event on the access to finance and the cost of capital in doing business. And I inserted a story in the keynote, and which struck a number of people in the audience. And after the address, they came to me to say, "Oh, I relate to that, and I relate to that." And that is something that I got from the course. And I realized that, I could bring it into my space, and actually has an impact, because people are usually persuaded and drawn to what you're saying based on the story that you tell.
When you think about this program, who do you think this program is best suited to? Who in your government or other governments would you think would be able to get the most from this kind of course?
So I would say that, people like myself, young people who are in leadership, who are on leadership trajectory. So if you're in a leadership position now, or a sub leadership position, and you see yourself going up, in the next 3 or 4 years, this is definitely something for you. And it shouldn't be restricted to just people in the politicians, maybe elected politicians or appointed officials. Civil servants also, who see themselves maybe becoming chief directors or directors of the department. You step away from that, definitely you'll benefit from this program. And also international public officers. I mean, if you're in a multilateral organization and you step away from being a director or a leader of your team, I think that, you should apply for this program. And also, if you're not in public service, but you're considering moving into public service, this program would also work out for you. Because what I realized was that, if I had, the skills that I have now at the time that I was joining the government in 2017, I think I would have performed far, far, far better than I have.
Thank you, Carl.
You're welcome.
So you have a third perspective from Co and Ghana. I hope you've got a chance to listen to these three extraordinary public officials and hear their perspectives on this. We have a time now for a few more questions, so please, this is your final chance to put those questions in. We're going to. I'll answer this one visually as well as in person. So I'm going to ask my colleague Holly to go ahead and play a small slideshow. The question we got is whether, apart from London, you'll be seeing any of Oxford and the famous colleges. And the answer is yes. As these slides suggest, we move you around Oxford a fair amount in the course of the program. There's a scene from one of the colleges. This is we use many different facilities across the campus. We'll spend most of the time in the School of Government, but Oxford is a very special place, I think, for all of us here. It's a community devoted to lifelong learning, and the architecture, the other people, the environment is really a part of any program here. So we just encourage you while you're here, take full advantage of that space. So we'll be moving around for meals in different locations, including some of those famous colleges you were asking about. We'll be using many of the historic buildings, but we'll also be working in the classrooms that have been beautifully custom fitted for just this kind of learning. We hope you'll be able to take full advantage of the location. Do we have any other questions? I'm not sure we do.
This is your chance to ask them if there is anything on your mind at the moment. We'll give you 30 seconds. How diverse is the program? That's a wonderful question. And in fact, diversity is at the core of what we do here in the program. I would say it's diverse in structure because you get exposed to so many different formats and so many different types of conversations. It's also diverse in terms of participation. From the faculty side, you'll see a plethora of styles and a plethora of backgrounds. And on the participant side, as you've heard, it's always international. You'll be surrounded by 25 up to 40 people who come from different cultures, different institutional backgrounds, very different ideas. It's as diverse as it can be, I would say.
Yeah, the faculty we've had participants in the program from all over the world, low, middle, high-income countries, operating in legal structures in civil and common law. We've had people from every continent in the world. I think the diversity of the participant group and the diversity of the faculty. This is the School of Government at Oxford is not a school about British government. We don't specialize in or offer any courses in the UK system of government. We're looking to train leaders, public officials, civil servants, appointed officials from all over the world in public sector, serving the public interest in their own country or in multilateral institutions. And you'll see that diversity reflected in the faculty, in the student body, and in all of the programs. It's also a wide diversity in other dimensions. There are people on the from conservative or liberal and progressive backgrounds. There are people of probably every religious faith. It's a very diverse community, and I think that helps people come and relax and take value in it from whatever background or identity or culture you're coming from. There's a wonderful comment from one of you about how nervous making it can be to apply for something in Oxford. And it can be intimidating. But I think, as you heard from Milena, for example, even for someone who can be easily intimidated, as she said she was, she rose to the occasion, and I think she found the company and the reinforcement and the confidence that comes from the program really meaningful for her. So I would just encourage you, even if you're a little nervous about it, take that leap, put in an application, try it out. It's only a little bit more than a week of your time, and it can really make a huge difference.
Yeah, you're absolutely encouraged to take that leap of faith, and you'll find that there is a sense of community very early on, and we are doing our very best to make sure that you are comfortable in this as soon as you're here. So no worries about that. The feeling of intimidation will go away immediately. We are going to have to leave it there. Thank you all for joining this webinar, and hope you found it helpful and useful for planning your applications.
Yeah, we'll get back in writing to a couple of you who have specific questions we haven't gotten to. But thank you for all the questions. Thank you for your attention, and please get those applications in. We both look forward to working with many of you here in Oxford this April.